Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Chicago is famous around the world as the Windy City. People often think of its cold and difficult winters. Residents are used to big snowstorms and icy winds from Lake Michigan. The city knows how to handle the cold. But Chicago has another, more dangerous climate reality. Its summers can be extremely hot and humid, creating a serious risk for its people. In the middle of July 1995, a terrible heat wave hit the city. For 5 days, the temperature stayed very high, sometimes over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The air was also very wet, which made it feel even hotter and more dangerous. The city was not ready for this kind of natural disaster. Its electrical system started to fail. Emergency services could not keep up with all the calls for help. The result was a tragedy. In just a few days, over 700 people died because of the heat. The victims were mostly the city's most vulnerable people. Many were old, sick, or poor. They often lived alone in small apartments without air conditioning. The city's hospitals filled up quickly, and the morgue did not have enough space for all the bodies. This event shocked everyone in Chicago. It was a clear sign that the city was not prepared for summer's fury. The disaster forced the city to ask a new and urgent question. How can a large, modern city protect its people from the growing danger of extreme heat? Chicago had to find new ways to fight the summer heat, and this search for answers would change the city forever. 2. A city on fire. The extreme heat was a big problem for Chicago. The city's systems started to fail. The temperature was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. With the humidity, it felt like 126 degrees. The city was not ready for this. Many people called 911 for emergency help. The 911 system received thousands more calls than a normal day. There were not enough ambulances. Sometimes people waited 2 hours for help. Fire trucks had to respond to medical calls because all the ambulances were busy. The electrical system also had problems. Everyone used their air conditioners, and the system could not handle it. In many neighborhoods, the power went out. This left people in the dark, without any way to cool their homes. The heat even damaged the city's streets and train tracks. The city's hospitals quickly filled up with sick people. Soon, there were no more beds available. The Cook County morgue, the place where the city keeps dead bodies, also had a serious problem. It was built to hold about 220 bodies, but soon it was completely full. The city had to bring in large, refrigerated trucks to store the bodies of the people who died. It was a very sad and shocking scene for a modern city. The heat wave was most dangerous for certain people. The victims were often poor and elderly. Many of them lived alone. They lived in neighborhoods on the south and west sides of the city. In these areas, People were often afraid to open their windows because of crime. Some people had air conditioners but did not turn them on. They were afraid they could not pay the high electricity bill. The disaster showed that Chicago had deep social problems. The heat did not create these problems, but it exposed them. People died not just from the heat, but because they were vulnerable and alone. 3. Green City. After the terrible heat, Chicago needed a new plan. City leaders understood that the city itself was making the heat worse. This is called the urban heat island effect. A city has many dark surfaces, like black roads and building roofs. These dark surfaces absorb heat from the sun all day. At night, they release the heat slowly. This makes the whole city much hotter than the green countryside around it. To fight this problem, Chicago decided to become a greener city. One of the first big ideas was to build green roofs. A green roof is a garden on top of a building. Instead of a normal hot black roof, a building gets a living roof with soil, flowers, and other plants. These green spaces help cool the city in two natural ways. First, the plants provide shade for the roof. Second, they release small amounts of water into the air. This process works like a natural air conditioner and cools the air around the building. To show everyone how this worked, the city created a special garden on the roof of City Hall in 2001. This roof had more than 20,000 plants. The city measured the temperature. On a hot summer day, the green roof was much cooler than a normal black roof. The new green roof idea was a success. After this, Chicago started to build many more green roofs. Today, the city has millions of square feet of green roofs. The famous Millennium Park is also one very large green roof over a garage and train tracks. The city also started a huge program to plant new trees. Trees are very important for cooling a city. Their leaves create large areas of shade on streets and buildings. A shady street can feel much cooler than a street in the direct sun. Like the plants on green roofs, trees also cool the air by releasing water. The city made a plan to plant hundreds of thousands of new trees. They focused on neighborhoods that had very few trees. These were often the same hot neighborhoods that suffered the most during the 1995 heat wave. By adding green roofs and planting new trees, Chicago began to fight the summer heat in a new, natural way. 4. Cool streets. After the heat wave, Chicago looked at its streets and buildings. The city has many dark surfaces. Black streets and dark roofs get very hot in the summer. They absorb the sun's energy and make the air warmer. This is a big problem in a city with a lot of buildings and roads. The city learned this makes the urban heat island effect worse, which is when cities are much hotter than the countryside around them. So, the city had a new idea: cool surfaces. A cool surface is a light-colored surface that reflects sunlight. It does not absorb a lot of heat. Instead, it sends the sun's energy back into the sky. This simple idea can make a big difference in a hot city. It is another tool, like trees and green roofs, to fight the summer heat. One important change was for rooftops. Not every building can have a green roof with plants. For these buildings, Chicago started to use cool roofs. These roofs are often white or are made with special reflective materials. A normal dark roof can get extremely hot on a sunny day. A white, cool roof stays much cooler. This helps keep the building cool inside and saves energy on air conditioning. The city also changed its alleys. Many alleys in Chicago used dark asphalt. The city started a green alley program. They used new, light-colored concrete for the pavement. This new pavement was much cooler than the old dark asphalt. On a hot day, the surface could be up to 15 degrees Fahrenheit cooler. These new alleys also helped manage rainwater. These ideas were successful. Chicago made new rules for buildings. Since 2008, new flat roofs must be reflective. When the city builds new roads or alleys, it must think about using cool materials. Changing the color of the city's surfaces is another important way Chicago is working to keep its people safe. 5. The Big Icebox. Chicago needed another smart idea to cool its tall buildings downtown. In the past, each building had its own air conditioning system. These separate systems used a lot of electricity, especially on hot summer days. This put a lot of pressure on the city's power supply. The city needed a better, more efficient way to keep its biggest buildings cool. The answer was a huge new system built under the city's streets. It is called a district cooling system. This means one very large cooling center does the work for over 100 buildings. It is like a public utility, but for air conditioning. A company called Centrio runs this amazing system. It sends cold water to many of Chicago's most famous buildings through 8 miles of pipes. People walking in the city cannot see these pipes. It is like a secret cold river flowing under the busy downtown area, known as the Loop. The system is very clever because of how it uses energy. It works like a giant icebox. At night, when most people are sleeping, not many people use electricity. This means power is cheaper. The system uses this time to make huge amounts of ice. It stores all this ice in very large special tanks. During the hot day, the city needs a lot of cooling. But making cool air uses expensive daytime electricity. So the system begins to melt the ice it made during the night. The melting ice cools down water to a very low temperature. This super cold water is then pumped through the network of underground pipes. In each building, a special machine uses the cold water to cool the air inside. The water takes the heat from the building and gets warmer. Then it flows back to the central plant to be chilled again the next night. This method is very efficient. It saves a lot of energy and money. It also reduces the stress on the city's power grid during heat waves. This system is very strong and reliable. During a big heat wave in 2012, it worked perfectly, even when other smaller cooling systems in the city failed. 6. Smart buildings. After changing the city's surfaces, Chicago looked at another big problem: its buildings. Some buildings make the heat worse, but others can help people stay cool. The city needed to learn from the past to build a better future. Long ago, before air conditioning, architects knew how to build for the heat. Old buildings in Chicago from the late 1800s are good examples. These buildings often have very thick brick walls. The thick walls absorb the sun's heat slowly, so the inside stays cooler during the day. They also have many windows that people can open to let in fresh air. High ceilings helped too. Hot air rises, so a high ceiling let the warm air go up, away from the people below. These buildings used smart, natural ways to keep people comfortable without using electricity. But in the middle of the 20th century, things changed. Architects started to build beautiful buildings made of glass and steel. These new buildings look very modern, but they have a big problem with heat. The glass walls act like a greenhouse. Sunlight comes in and heats up the inside very fast. The windows in these buildings are usually sealed and cannot be opened. This means the buildings must use powerful air conditioning all day. They use a huge amount of electricity. During a heat wave, this puts a lot of stress on the city's power system. If the power fails, these glass buildings can become dangerously hot very quickly. So, Chicago started to build a new type of smart building. These new buildings combine the best ideas from the past with modern technology. They learn from old designs by using heavy materials like concrete to absorb heat. They also have a central open space called an atrium that works like a chimney. The atrium lets hot air rise and escape out of the top of the building. But these buildings also use new technology. They have special high-performance glass and outdoor shades to block the sun. Computers control the systems. They can open windows automatically when the air outside is cool enough. These smart buildings use much less energy. They are more comfortable and safer during extreme heat. This new way of thinking about architecture helps make Chicago a cooler, more resilient city. 7. Still hot. Chicago made many important changes after the 1995 heat wave. These changes help fight the summer heat. The city has new green roofs and cool streets. But these new cooling systems are not everywhere in the city. A new kind of problem has appeared. The city is now divided. Some parts are cool and safe, but other parts are still very hot and dangerous during summer. The downtown area, called the Loop, is a good example of the change. It is now much safer on hot days. It has the big district cooling system under the ground. This system sends cold water to cool many big buildings. Many new buildings are also smart and stay cool easily. This is good for the people who work and live in the center of the city. But in many neighborhoods on the south and west sides, things have not changed as much. These areas are where most people died during the 1995 heat wave. Today, they still have fewer protections. For example, rich neighborhoods on the north side have many trees. The trees provide shade and keep the streets cool. But some poor areas have very few trees. The sun hits the dark asphalt streets and makes them very hot. Air conditioning is also a serious problem of inequality. Most people in Chicago have an air conditioner, but in low-income areas, people are often afraid to use it. They know that electricity is expensive. They worry that they cannot pay the high bills at the end of the month. So, on the hottest days, they keep their windows closed and suffer inside very hot homes. There is another difficult problem. Sometimes the city's solutions make things worse for the people who live in a neighborhood. When the city adds new parks and many trees to an area, it becomes a nicer place to live. New, richer people want to move there. This makes the price of houses go up. Soon, the original families who lived there for many years can no longer afford to stay. They are forced to leave their homes. Chicago's work to cool the city is important, but it is not finished. The new systems are smart, but the benefits are not for everyone. The city is cooler for some people, but the problem of inequality between rich and poor neighborhoods is now more clear than ever. 8. The future city. Chicago has changed a lot since the terrible heat wave in 1995. The city has worked hard to fight the summer heat with new technology. But this fight is not over. In fact, it is becoming more difficult. The world's climate is getting hotter. Scientists believe that Chicago's future summers will be much warmer. The city will have many more days with temperatures above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Future heat waves could be longer and more dangerous than the one in 1995. The city's green roofs and cool systems are a good start, but they are not the complete answer. Technology alone cannot solve the problem. During the 1995 disaster, many people died not just from the heat, but because they were socially isolated. They were old, poor, and lived alone. This showed that the biggest danger was not having anyone to help. So, Chicago learned that social connections are as important as cooling systems. A truly safe city needs strong communities. For the future, people must help each other more. Neighbors can check on older people or anyone who lives by themselves. Community groups can create plans to help everyone on their street. Some neighborhoods even have special volunteers who help during heat emergencies. The future of a cool Chicago depends on both technology and people. Smart buildings and green spaces are necessary, but strong communities where people care for one another are also necessary. They must work together. What is one way people in your community help each other when the weather is extreme?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.